I'm glad to be here with that big conference. This is my first big international conference, so I'm a bit nervous. Today I want to talk about client-side mocking for REST APIs. You know, we are nearly whole days we are talking about single-page applications, progressive web applications, everything. So I assume that nearly all of us using REST APIs. So mocking our APIs should be a important topic. My name is Murat Çorlu. Until last year, I was living in Istanbul. I had my own company. I was working as a consultant for many big companies in Istanbul. Then I moved to Eindhoven last year, and I'm working at Philips Lighting. Actually, I'm working at Signify. Maybe some of you already know. Philips Lighting changed its name. Nearly all of the social platforms I'm using username Murat Çorlu, so you can easily find me. So why we need mocks, or do we really need it? If we have mocks, we can develop our tasks without waiting some backend development. Let's assume that as an application developer, you need to develop a feature that will need some new endpoints that is not there yet. Generally, we prefer to but lots of people prefer to wait to have that endpoint in your backend API, then implement front end, then make an integration. But this is not agile. With mocking approach, you will start your work by defining your mocks and start the implementation immediately without waiting the real API. Then the great part is when your backend is really ready, the new endpoint is ready, you will not need to do anything else for deploying your code, because you should be already ready for that new endpoint with your code base. Then you will just deploy it. That gives a very big power and very big flexibility. Also, that's also great for testing new user stories without having or waiting endpoints that should be ready. Then it will be also very easy to just testing, just look and feel without having a backend. Sometimes we hear very interesting issues from our users. Probably all of you have that kind of problems. That we will not test it, or it's also not very easy to test. Some test cases could be very hard to test if you are just testing with your real endpoints. But with mocking approach, it is just editing some JSON files for you. You can create every kind of problems with just editing your mocks, and you will see the status of your application in that data. Then you can easily see and fix the problem. Also, the remote working is very popular nowadays. There are lots of people here I saw working as remotely, but unfortunately, to have a very good internet connection is not completely solved yet. So also big companies like Philips has very strict rules about accessing to our development APIs. We are using VPNs, we are using proxies, and generally they are not very good. But with mocking approach, actually you don't need, because of you are not really making real requests to your API, you don't need to have any VPN, you don't need to have a proxy, even you don't need to have an internet at all. So you will have full of freedom of development, but of course until you need to commit your code. Okay, I think everybody is convinced about using a mocking approach, but how it can be easy? Is it easy to implement that thing? How much overhead will we have? We have a library that I created nearly 5 years ago when I was in Istanbul, when I was working for Sahibinden.com. Its name is Connect API Mocker. Actually, it's a very simple thing that it's a Connect.js middleware. Probably most of you already heard that, Connect.js. Express.js also using that approach. It's an npm package, and it's easy to install and use it. Actually, there are lots of mocking solutions for client-side applications. I don't want to say this is the best one. Probably, maybe there are some better applications for you, for your use case. But I use that Connect API Mocker in many companies, including Signify now. We are using it in our applications. So we are already very happy about it. And also in that presentation, I want to use Connect API Mocker as an example of using that approach. So consider that it's a use case example for mocking approach. How we can use it? This is a simple example for Webpack. Many of the front-end developers are already using Webpack for bundling. So in Webpack Dev Server, we have a before function, and we can add some extra middlewares here. Because of API Mocker is just a connect middleware, you can simply create a mocking solution for your application. Actually, in this example, we are just connecting a request path, base path, to a folder. Connect API Mocker uses file system for creating mock definitions. So, in this kind of configuration, if we make a GET request to API/user/1, API Mocker will try to check get JSON file inside that path. You already see the correlation between request and the path. We are using method as file name, method.json. Path is URL path, and we have a base URL and base path. It's working for all kind of HTTP methods like post or delete. If you place just a post.json file and if you make a post request there, then you will get that static response. This is a demonstration of, is it playing? Yes. That simple example. When I start the application, I have a get.json file. And if I make the request, then I will get the static file. If I change it and make a refresh, I will see it. Just as simple as this. Because of we are already doing a request, this is not a mocking approach like we are using in our unit test, for example. In unit test, you are actually not doing any HTTP request. So it is not same as we are doing in our applications. But here, we already have a mocking server. So when we are coding our application, we can assume that we already have an API now. So we are writing our codes as we do normally. So after our backend team created real endpoint, we will not need to do anything about our front-end application. It will just work. Because for us, it's same request and same response. Connect API Mocker uses JSON responses by default, but it's also support XML. I don't know how many people are using still XML, but it's possible if you set type XML, instead of checking JSON file, it checks the XML files. Also, there's an auto type. With auto type, it checks the accept request header, and if it is XML, it tries to return XML file. Static responses are very easy to use, but of course, it's not easy for every case. Just because of that, Connect API Mocker has a custom response support. If you place a JavaScript file instead of a JSON file to same directory, that exports a Connect middleware, then Connect API Mocker will run that middleware for you. For example, here we are defining a custom response that checks a xout key header in request, and if it is not there, it returns a access forbidden header. Otherwise, it returns a static response. This is how is it working. Now we have a post.js and post.json file, and I'm running the application. This is a command line HTTP client. I'm making a post request without that header, then I'm getting forbidden error. If I make a request with that header that we need to check, then we are returning the post.js content. So it's very powerful. With the custom responses, because of we are actually writing a connect middleware, actually possibilities are nearly limitless. For example, we can read query parameters, post body data, and we can return different answers depending on that things. Also, because of Connect API Maker is just a connect middleware, we are actually opening a connect server, so it's server instance. So it's also possible to store some in-memory variables, and like this example, you can send some different answers depending on the request count. As you may notice, using IDs in paths in the mock folders can be a bit problematic, right? Because we will have lots of objects and we will need to define lots of folders that will return nearly the same data. So because of that, Connect API Mocker has also a feature like this. If you define a variable name with starting and ending with double underscore, that means that this is a wildcard for us, and all of the requests for that path with any numbers will be responded by that get.json file by Connect API Mocker. This is very powerful for custom responses, because Connect API Mocker passes that variable as a request parameter to that middleware. So with that kind of connect middleware custom response, you can create nearly dynamic responses for your mocks with the help of variable. This is how it is working. We have a get.js file inside __ user ID _ folder. We also still have one folder, and if you make a request that we don't have a specific mock, it will run the get.js file and return that. But if you make a request for user/1, because of that, we have a more specific response, mock for that URL. It will continue to respond with that mock. Normally, when you are using Connect API Mocker, if there is no mock definition for that requested URL, it will return simply not found error. That means you need to define all endpoints for your API to work with your application with the mocking approach. But this is not very cool, right? But sometimes we will just want to test or mock only one endpoint for our REST API. This is why we have a next on not found settings. With the help of that settings, if Connect API Mocker cannot find a mock definition for that requested URL, it will just pass the request. This is very tricky if you have a proximity device. This because of that. Sorry. uh, this is very powerful if you have a proxy definition, because with a proxy definition like this example, this proxy definition is a part of a Webpack dev server, and with that proxy definition, actually we want to mock some endpoints, but if you don't want to mock some endpoints, we are just passing requests to do our real API, and that response will come from our real API. So in that case, oops, is it playing? No. Yeah. Yeah, we have next on not found true, and we have a proxy definition. We have post/1 mock file. Now, if we make a request for post/1, yeah, we are getting our static response. If we make a request for post/2, this response is coming from that JSON placeholder blah blah.com. That's very cool thing that for us, because for example, you want to fix one issue, you don't have any mock. If you have just mock only one endpoint, you can continue with that, and you don't need to mock anything else. Using Connect API Maker Connect API Maker is easy with Webpack, Gulp, Grunt, but if you want to use mocking applications without that libraries, like your mobile application or your backend application, you will need a separate solution, right? Because you don't have Grunt or Webpack. This is what CLI API Mocker presents. CLI API Mocker is also an npm package that we created. It's just a simple wrapper for Connect API Mocker as a command line application. You can install with npm, and after you install, you will have a command like named mockit. By default, mockit runs a server on port 9090 for current folder. You can change ports, you can change target and target folder and base URLs with some command line things. So if you just run mockit, if you have a user's request and if you have a user/get JSON file, then it will work. Then this is how is it working. We don't have any configuration, just we have a mock file, and we are just running mockit. Then if I make a call with same path, it will work. It will just work. Also, it's possible to define the config file for mockit, CLI API Mocker, with the file name of mock.config.js. You can define your ports, your base URLs, and target folders easily. Also, it has a proxy definition easily, like we have in Webpack example. If you define settings like that, it will check your mock definition for that URL. If it cannot find, it will check your real API. Because of that proxy definition object is just a HTTP proxy middleware settings. It's very popular. Even Webpack is using that library. So every config options of HTTP proxy middleware is also available with CLI API Mocker. And this is how is it working. We have a definition, and we also have a proxy definition. I changed the port with thing, and I'm making requests that we already have mock, and I'm also making another request that we don't have a mock, then it's also responding. So because of this is a standalone command line application, you can use this with your iOS application, with your even backend application, just with running separately. Capture mode is another powerful feature of Mockit. With this mode, you can easily create your mock files by your real API responses. After you enable capture mode with a proxy definition, if you make a request that doesn't have a mock definition already, response of your proxy request will be written to file system as a mock file. That's a very cool thing. Let's see. I added capture true, and now we have a mock file for users 1. It's coming. And if I make a request to user/2, I got the response, and I also got the response as a mock definition. If even I make a request for users3, I got the response, and I got the mock file. If I make a make another request to user/2, that it will not proceed again because we already have that mock. So just by enabling capture mode and just by navigating your application, you can create mock files for all of your scenarios, and that makes that flow, how can I say, is easy to reproduce without backend. Even after you capture your whole flow, you can even close your Wi-Fi. Then you will be able to navigate your application with just your mocks. So this is mocking approach for client applications. We are using with the help of Connect API Mocker. As I said before, you can also find and choose some other tools that has different approach. But the key point is, in my opinion, you should use that approach for your application that has a REST API. If you decide to use that approach, this is some steps to try with your application, with your team. When you want to create a new feature that doesn't have an endpoint yet, you can just start with a meeting with your backend team for creating that contract for that new endpoint. You can actually create a Swagger or RAML documentation in that meeting. So just after that contract, you can immediately start to develop your front-end application or mobile application that what you are doing. Then just after the real endpoint is ready, you can immediately deploy your application without needing any change. So this is giving a very agile process for you. You don't need to wait for anything, and also because of defining the endpoint in the first, your API structure will be better, I think. Also for bug fixing and testing scenarios, just manipulate your mock files to reproduce the same condition and fix it easily. You don't need to create same condition with the bug problem with many manual things. You can just edit file and you can see. And because of these two libraries are open source, please don't hesitate to contribute them to add new features or fix some problems that you noticed. Thank you for your joining. That was it.